Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94 here, back with another reaction video. Today, we finna react to discontinued belts, retired WWE titles. So these are all discontinued. So, hey, man, let's get right into it. It's a lot. See here, Hardcore Championship. Most recently, the 24/7 Championship. What else was there? The European title. There was a European title. The WCW Big Gold Heavyweight title, but they recently brought it back in a new form. So the World Heavyweight title is back. I can't really think of any other ones that have been like discontinued, but yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it.
There are a lot of titles that have been sanctioned by WWE over the years. After all, we're talking about a company that's been around since the 1950s in its various forms. So it should come as no surprise then that not all of these titles have survived for the long haul. No, while belts like the WWE title and the Intercontinental title remain strong today, others haven't been so lucky. And it's those lost belts we're going to be looking at today, starting with the European title. Yes, if you were a fan of the WWF during the Attitude Era, then you no doubt remember this one, as during its short history it was actually held by a number of notable names such as Triple H, Eddie Guerrero, and Kurt Angle. Not that this made it a main event belt at any point though. No, despite being contested over by some great talents, the European title was always more mid-card in its nature, a rung below the IC strap even. Why was it so low down on the pecking order? Because there were a lot of belts.
Because it was a great way to give somebody a title run. It was a test run to see if somebody could hold a title. Let's see what you can do with this title. If you can get over with this title and the crowd fuck with you, we can possibly move you up to the Intercontinental or even the World or WWE Championship. I think that was what the European title was. It was a test run title for a lot of upcoming guys. And I wish WWE would have kept it around because it will hold value today. If they would bring it back, I would love for them to bring the European title back and be like, hey, if you the European title, this is your test run. This is a test run. Can you hold on to it? Can the crowd get behind you? If that's so, and you can hold on to the title for about 2 or 3 pay-per-views. We'll give you. We'll start looking into you. We'll start moving you up. We'll start moving you up the ladder.
Belts going around back then, and only so many of them could be main event level. It didn't matter if the inaugural holder of the new piece of gold was the British Bulldog. It still never felt as important as a world title. That said, this shouldn't suggest there weren't some memorable moments surrounding Europe's own WWE prize during the time that it existed. No, aside from the infamous Shawn Michaels British Bulldog match it gave us at One Night Only in 1997, it was also the centerpiece of the Triple H Owen Hart feud in 1998, Shane McMahon's first rise to prominence in 1999, and a great three-way program between Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, and Chris Benoit in 2000. Sadly though, as time went on and those performers started moving on to bigger and better things, the European title's star fell to new lows. And this was exactly why, in 2002, when WWE were looking to consolidate some of their belts, the decision was made to merge this one with the Intercontinental title. Who would be the last person to hold the belt then? Well, technically that would be Rob Van Dam after he beat Jeff Hardy in said unification match. And since that date, we've not heard a single whisper about it ever making a return. Still though, the spirit of the European title would hang around in the form of our next set of belts, because while they might not have represented the entire continent, they did represent a major part of it in the UK. That's right, it's time for us to talk about NXT UK and all their deactivated pieces of gold.
Oh, yeah.
And there are a fair amount of belts for us to go through here as it happens. After all, we're talking about an entire brand. So when NXT UK finally closed its doors in the summer of 2022, it would mean the death of not only the NXT United Kingdom Championship, but also the NXT United Kingdom Women's Championship and the NXT United Kingdom Tag Team Championships too. Yes, in one fell swoop, they all went forever, and that's sad because there is a great lineage to all three of these, with perhaps the most impressive being the Men's World title, a title that was first held by Tyler Bate back in 2017. Of course, for as great as Bate is though, he isn't the most impressive NXT UK champion, and that's because after him came names like Pete Dunne, Ilya Dragunov, and the mighty Walter, a who's who of some of the best wrestlers in the world today. So it's easy to see how, while it might have been short-lived and recent, there's still a lot of nostalgia for this particular piece of hardware. And the same could be said for the NXT UK Women's title too, as it happens, because the list of people who have held that one include Kaylee Ray, Miko Satomura, Toni Storm, and Rhea Ripley. Obviously then, all of these are women who have made their mark on the larger wrestling industry, with Ripley arguably being the biggest women's star going today. And a big stepping stone in her reaching the level she's reached has to be the fact that, before she was main roster bound, she was able to call herself a champion on the British brand of WWE's developmental show. Then there are the NXT UK Tag Team titles, a set of belts which, at first glance, might not seem to have quite the same level of prestige to them that the men's and women's world titles have, but when you look at their lineage, you'll find that there are some great teams who held them around their waists over the course of their existence. We're talking about names like Mustache Mountain, the Grizzled Young Veterans, and Brooks Jensen and Josh Briggs. And they're not the only pairings who can say they were NXT UK Tag Team Champions either. No, there was also Ashton Smith and Oliver Carter, Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews, Gallus, and everyone's favorite Yes Boys, Pretty Deadly. So as you can see, despite only lasting for 5 years, this was a prize which had quite a history to it. But then the same could really be said about all of these since deactivated NXT UK titles, as if you look at the people who held them, you're getting a pretty good cross-section of some of the top talent working today. Really, what NXT UK and its belts signaled was the start of a new British invasion of sorts in the wrestling industry, an invasion which has since taken root deeply. Hell, so deeply rooted now that one of its prizes still actually exists in the form of the NXT Heritage Cup, a cup which, as of the time of this video's recording, has been moved over to NXT full-time, where it's currently being held by Charlie Dempsey. One belt which was periodically defended in NXT UK, which hasn't survived to the present day, however, would be our next subject, a belt which straddled 3 brands at its peak, with those 3 brands being the US and UK branches of the Black and Gold brand, as well as 205 Live. What belt are we talking about here? Why, the Cruiserweight title, of course. And what makes this entry so special is that there isn't just one example of a Cruiserweight title being deactivated in WWE. No, there are 2. That's right, outside of the one we alluded to a moment ago, the one which met its end in 2022 when it was unified with the NXT North American Championship, there's also the original Cruiserweight belt, the one that was brought over from WCW during the invasion. So which one to focus on then? Well, let's look at the original one first. That was the one which began life when Shinjiro Otani won it in 1996 during a New Japan Pro Wrestling event, and from there, quickly made its way over to America, where it was regularly fought over by the likes of Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho, and Eddie Guerrero. Unfortunately for it though, it was also the one which, when WWE took over possession of it in 2001, began to be treated far less prestigious, as it was there often held by the likes of Chavo Classic and Hornswoggle. That's right, it was while Hornswoggle was the champ back in the summer of 2007 that Vince McMahon decided that the whole thing had run its course, and so deactivated it. But this wouldn't be the end of the Cruiserweight division in WWE forever, because years later in 2016 it would be revived as a prize to be awarded to the winner of the Cruiserweight Classic, a tournament which included performers as talented and as high level as Johnny Gargano, Kota Ibushi, and Zack Sabre Jr. In the end though, it wouldn't be any of these men who won the tournament, and as a result, the belt. No, that honor would fall to TJ Perkins instead. And with him being great in his own right, it meant the new Cruiserweight title was off to a good start. And that's why it was such a shame then that as time went on, the exact same fate which befell the original would befall this one too, as terrible placement meant it became hard for any fans to care about this particular piece of gold, even when it was being fought over by the likes of Lio Rush, Kushida, and Roderick Strong. So when Carmelo Hayes was able to win it from Roddy in January of 2022 and, in the process, unify it with the NXT North American Championship, it didn't feel like as big of a loss as it should have, largely on account of how much the reputation of the title had been damaged by then. Will we ever see it get a third bite of the apple in WWE? Anything's possible, but if it ever does, we hope this time it's given a lot more focus, as there's so many great things that can be done with it.
Keep it on NXT if you bring it back. If you bring it back, keep it on NXT. Do not bring it back to the main roster. Because y'all don't even do nothing with the cruiserweights that you got on the main roster. So keep it in NXT so it can have prestige there. I think it would do so much better in NXT.
But let's move away from the Cruiserweight title for now and on to our next subject, WWE's early attempt to replicate this one during the Attitude Era. That's right, it's time to talk about the
forgot
light
about this
title.
one.
Yes, many fans will remember that back during the mid to late 90s, WCW was very firmly on top of the wrestling world for a time, with this meaning WWF was always playing defense, trying to catch up to them. And one of the ways they tried to play catch-up during this time was by taking the Cruiserweight title their competition had done so much with and creating their own version in the Light Heavyweight title. The only problem with this, though, was that while the Cruiserweight title gave us some of the greatest matches of the era, a constant flurry of fast-paced, high-flying theatrics, the Light Heavyweight equivalent was lacking in quality bouts as, rather than being fought over by Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, it was often fought over by performers like Scott Putski and Gillberg. Sure, there were some talented wrestlers who held this one, names like Taka Michinoku, Dean Malenko, and X-Pac, but overall, the light heavyweight division was just never there for WWF in the same way the Cruiserweight one was for WCW.
I would love for them to bring the light heavyweight title back, though. Bring the light heavyweight title back and put it on the main roster. I think that would work well. You could put it on people like, who would be a good candidate to start off with? Dominic would definitely carry that belt, that light heavyweight title. Put that on Dominic. I swear to God, that title is going to the fucking moon because Dominic is the perfect fucking heel. Hey man, I'm just saying though, man. Dominic Mysterio needs a title right now, bro, to keep his character relevant because he's a scumbag heel. And when you got a scumbag heel that gets the heat that he gets, you have to put a title on him, bro. It keeps him relevant, bro. It really does.
And so that was exactly why, after getting injured while holding it in 2001, Sean Waltman ended up becoming the final holder, as Vince McMahon didn't even feel it was worth doing a unification bout with it and the similar belt he'd brought up from Atlanta a couple of months previously. That's right, this one was so unimportant by the end, it never even got a proper send-off.
Damn.
Rather, it just disappeared into the ether, never to be seen again. And obviously, with the Cruiserweight title being the high-flying belt of choice for WWE in the years since then, it doesn't look like there's any hope we'll ever see the return of the light heavyweight division in the future. But what about our next belt, the Hardcore title? Was that ever booked strongly as an important part of the show?
No.
Well, yes. There was a period where it was booked well. In fact, during the Attitude Era, it was usually one of the more fun parts of Raw every week. After all, who can forget Mankind's inaugural run with it, that three-way between Kane, The Big Show, and Raven at WrestleMania 17 over it, or the many, many times Crash Holly escaped by the skin of his teeth still in possession of it. Hell, that latter example gave us so many fun times, as it was during the period where the belt was being defended under 24/7 rules, meaning that anyone could challenge for it at any time, regardless of where in the world they were, so long as they had a referee with them to count the fall. That said, as time went on and the Attitude Era gave way to the Ruthless Aggression Era, there was a definite sense that the Hardcore title was losing any momentum it had and was becoming more and more of an afterthought, with this partially being because it moved away from being Crash Holly's precious and instead became Raw's fourth most important prize. So it was then that after a few years of Maven, Bubba Ray Dudley, Tommy Dreamer, and for some reason The Undertaker holding it, it would be deactivated for good in 2002 as part of WWE's mass decision to get rid of all their mid-card belts during the early 2000s. Who was the last holder of this one then? Well, technically, it would be Rob Van Dam, the man who beat Tommy Dreamer to unify it with the Intercontinental title. And we suppose, given the fact that both of these men were ECW alumni, this made for a fitting end to the belt, which had at one point represented all that was hardcore in WWE. But as we said a moment ago, it'll be neither of these performers who ultimately define that strap. No, if one person is going to be forever associated with it, it'll be Crash Holly, as for so long, the whole thing was really his division. Yes, it's not been uncommon for a lower card title in WWE to pretty much revolve around one person. It's certainly what happened with our next now defunct title, one which served as the spiritual successor to the Hardcore title in many ways, the 24/7 title. That's right, if there was ever going to be one person most commonly associated with the 24/7 title, it would be R-Truth. But then why wouldn't that be the name associated with it, as it was a comedy belt and no one on the roster at the time was funnier than Ron Killings?
Facts.
Sure, it wasn't the most beloved title ever, as after a while the whole thing became a game of who can chase the Charlotte native around in backstage segments every week trying to beat him under 24/7 rules, but it was never meant to be anything more than that. No, as we mentioned a moment ago, this one was always supposed to be the spiritual successor to the hardcore title of the Attitude Era. Hell, that's exactly why inaugural hardcore champion Mick Foley was the one to first introduce it back in May of 2019. And while the first person to hold this particular piece of hardware would be Titus O'Neil, pretty soon it would become the R-Truth show whenever the belt was on screen. That said, Truth wasn't the only person of note to call himself champion during the 3 years it was active. No, while his 53 reigns might represent the apex of what it achieved, there were also plenty of fun times to be had with other people like Drake Maverick, Dana Brooke, and Akira Tozawa too. And then there are all the celebs who got in on the fun, celebs such as football player Rob Gronkowski, EDM musician Marshmello, and the spirit of Christmas himself, Santa Claus. Sadly, for those who enjoyed all the hijinks though, the fun would have to come to an end when Triple H took over as head of creative in 2022, and the final champ, Nikki Cross, saw fit to dump the belt in the trash, with it never being seen again since. Of course, there's always the chance it will come back again though. After all, that's exactly what happened with our next subject over the years, the $1 Million Championship. Now, like with the recently deactivated FTW title over on AEW, the $1 Million title serves a unique spot in its company in that it's never been a formally recognized prize. So the official record books never saw it as being active in the first place. But as far as fans were concerned, it was always there to be seen on TV back when Ted DiBiase first introduced it in the summer of 1988 after being unable to beat Hulk Hogan for the Real World title. How would its lineage go following that introduction? Well, unsurprisingly, it would mostly serve as a prop for the $1 Million Man to make himself look good, though it should also be noted that it would at one point briefly be won by Virgil as well. And Virgil isn't the only other person aside from DiBiase who's held the $1 Million title, because after it was deactivated in 1992, it would briefly be brought back again in 1995 as the championship of choice for Ted's new client at the time, the Ringmaster, Steve Austin. Once that was over though, it really did feel like the belt created specifically for Ted DiBiase was gone forever. And for a full decade and a half, that was the case. But in 2010, things changed once more when Ted DiBiase Jr., the son of the $1 Million Man, hit the ring for the first time and brought the old bejeweled piece of hardware along with him for the ride. No, this run didn't do too much to add to the overall legacy of the belt, as mere months later it would be deactivated all over again. But it's still worth mentioning regardless, if for no other reason than because it kept the title alive in fans' memories for long enough for it to be brought back for a fourth time in 2021. That's right, this was the point where, down in NXT, L.A. Knight beat Cameron Grimes to call himself the 6th $1 Million champion, an achievement he carried with pride. But
I think this should be the Money in the Bank. This should be the Money in the Bank thing going forward. I think that the $1 Million belt should be a Money in the Bank, and you cash it in. You take it off, you cash it in, you get you a match against any champion on the roster. I think it should go from a briefcase to a title. So that way, even if you win it, you can hold on to it for a year, but you can also defend it against somebody. So if somebody wants to challenge you for it and you want to accept it, they can challenge you for it. So that way it would make more sense if you put it on somebody, but they're not the guy that you really want to put it on, i.e. Otis. Like if they would have just made it a title instead and then had him face the Miz for it as like a belt, that would make more sense than fighting over a briefcase. I don't think that's fair if you win a ladder and you got a briefcase with a contract in it that guarantees you a championship match at any given time. I don't think that's fair to be having matches over it after you done already won the match. That's why I say take the $1 Million title, make it the Money in the Bank, make it the thing you need to win Money in the Bank at. So once you win the $1 Million title, you got a guaranteed WWE title match. But some people can also challenge you for it and you can lose it. And then you have to go through all this. I think it helps build up the Money in the Bank person if we make it a title instead of a suitcase. That's just me though. I know it sounds a little complicated, but if you really think about it, it does make a lot of sense because it brings more prestige to it. So now you have to defend the title in order to keep it. Instead of just walking around with a briefcase the whole fucking time talking about yeah, I'm the Money in the Bank winner, and then you don't cash it in till damn near fucking WrestleMania. Come on, Chief.
Even that wouldn't be the end of the belt's lineage because 4 weeks after winning it, Knight would drop it to Grimes during the rematch. And after Grimes became the champion, a situation would present itself where Ted DiBiase stole it back and drove off with it, leaving it to disappear from TV thereafter. Will it get a fifth run at some point before all is said and done? We'd be inclined to say it's highly likely. One belt we don't ever see making a return again now, though, is our next subject, the WWE ECW World Title. Yes, the original ECW World Title might be one of the best remembered belts of the 90s, what with it being the top prize fought over in Paul Heyman's paradigm-shifting Renegade Philly promotion. In fact, the lineage of that original prize includes some of the most well-remembered stars of the era, names like Taz, Tommy Dreamer, Raven, and Terry Funk. Once ECW went out of business in 2001, though, it felt like we'd seen the last of it forever. That was until Vince McMahon decided to revive the promotion in the mid-2000s, with this being the point that Rob Van Dam was crowned the inaugural champion of the new WWE ECW brand. Would RVD be able to keep the legacy of this once great belt going?
Nope.
Well, he might have been able to had WWE ECW not been a watered-down version of the original brand. Still though, even if WWE ECW wasn't the most beloved show by many fans, there were some great holders of its world title during the 4 years it was active. After all, this was the first world title CM Punk ever held within the WWE system. And it's not just Punk who got a career boost from the existence of such a prize. No, there's also the fact that Chavo Guerrero was able to become a world champion when he likely never would have been otherwise. And if that's not enough, how about the fact that Bobby Lashley's initial rise in the Fed centered around the WWE ECW strap? Sure, there were a lot of bad things associated with this one, with the lowest point probably being the time Vince McMahon himself won it. And when you consider the fact that
when Vince had it, it was actually legitimized, bro. It was actually legitimized when Vince had it, because Vince is the ultimate heel. Vince is the perfect heel for anything, bro. Like, I'm telling you, dog. Before all this bullshit started happening with this freaky ass nigga, bro, if you gave a title to Vince and he cherished it and ran with it and abused his power with it, I'm telling you, you are walking. It's a gold mine at that point, because everybody gonna want a gun for that title, bro. Everybody gonna want him to lose that title. It brings prestige to the title when Vince has it.
The last ever champion was Ezekiel Jackson. It really says it all about how such a once prized possession had fallen from its early days. But even then, it's still not necessarily the worst belt in WWE in recent memory. No, that might be our next subject, the NXT Women's Tag Team titles. Yes, while the main roster women's tag team titles have become infamous amongst many fans, what if we were to remind you that it used to be worse? Because despite having no notable division to speak of, there were once two sets of women's tag team titles in WWE, with the second ones being exclusive to NXT. Yes, for a brief period between 2021 and 2023, the NXT women's tag team titles were contested over on the developmental brand. And as you can probably guess, there weren't a whole lot of exciting moments which happened during this period. Not because the women involved weren't talented, of course. Rather, it was more because they weren't given much of note to do. That's right, it didn't matter if it was inaugural champs Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez, or subsequent holders of the belts like Io Shirai and Zoe Stark, Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez, or Katana Chance and Kaden Carter. No one seemed to be able to crack the code of how to make a division interesting when there was no division there worth speaking of. Just a whole bunch of thrown together teams taking turns at holding the belts. Even when the occasional established duo like Toxic Attraction or The Way got a run, it still just never felt like it clicked. So it should come as no surprise then that in 2023, WWE realized there was simply no need to have two sets of women's tag team titles in their company. And that was exactly why a unification match was booked for both on the June 23rd episode of SmackDown that year. Who won this match, pitting roster champs Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler against developmental champs The Unholy Union? Well, that would be the former pair, with this technically making the baddest woman on the planet one half of the last ever NXT Women's Tag Team Champions.
Damn.
Yes, it's certainly a notable way to end the lineage of a prize which so few coveted, and it at least leaves things on somewhat of a high note. It's just a shame the same thing couldn't be said about all the belts we've discussed today then, because whether loved or hated, they all deserve to be remembered for more than just being prizes which disappeared into the ether one day and were never seen again, left to linger among the sea of now defunct WWE titles.
Yeah, man, that's just gonna about do it for this one, man. Most definitely. Oh boy, just good times with these belts. Well, some of them, not all of them. I'd probably say if there was a title to bring back, you could bring back the cruiserweight, but you have to leave it at NXT. Never bring back the 24/7 title, nor the hardcore title. Don't bring neither one of them back. Keep both them bitches in the trash where they belong. Who's next? I'm trying to think. You can bring back the light heavyweight title, but you have to put it on people that you feel are next in line to be heavyweight or world heavyweight champion, or WWE champion, I should say. Like, it has to be for somebody that's next in line, that you feel like you can put a title around. Like, the WWE does need a test run belt. There does need to be a test run belt on the main roster, because I feel like for so long now, WWE has done a terrible job in recognizing talent when they have it. And I feel like they don't do it like they used to, because they don't have a test run belt no more. There are no more test runs belt. It's either you're going to be a tag team champion, or you end up with the United States Championship or the Intercontinental Championship. They consider those test runs, but those are not test run titles. Those are mid-card titles. Those are that's like right below the WWE and World Heavyweight title. They're right below them. That's because that's the next step up. So giving like the lightweight title back, the light heavyweight title back, that's a great test run title for certain stars. Give a star that title, give them a test run, see how long they do with it. Like I said, I feel like the first person to be that champion should be Dominic. Dominic should be the first light heavyweight champion. Let him go on a run with it for about a good, let him go on a run with it for about a good 3 to 4 pay-per-views. And then he'll finally lose it. Because you have such a scumbag heel that you can build the title up so easily. It's so easy to build up a title when you have a scumbag heel holding it. Dominic is the perfect person to put a title around if you really want to start it off right. At this moment right now. And then you can give it to somebody else that you feel like is on the come up. Let them run with it. See how they do with it. Can they get a reaction from the crowd? Is the crowd really fucking with it? Can we get something out of it? And if so, and they hold on to it for long enough, then we can move you up to either United States or World Heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can move you up either way. WWE needs another test run belt. That's all I'm saying. I think a test run belt is perfect for WWE. It should be able to go to both brands. It should be able whoever the champion is, they should be able to flip flop between Raw and SmackDown. So there's an array of opponents. There's an array of people that we can look into and see, hey, is this somebody we can really put the title on? Is this somebody that the crowd is really receptive to? I really think that WWE sucks in development. of character development in certain people. Then again, it's also the wrestlers' fault too. But I feel like WWE needs to really start developing their talent or giving people runs to see if they're actually talented. Because some people don't even get the fucking chance to do it because you're overlooking them for these storylines with this person and that person and that person. And I don't feel like that's how it should be. There does need to be a test run title, for real, in WWE going forward. But I digress, though. Anyways, that's just going to about do it for this one. I'll see y'all in the next video. Till then, peace out.